Anambra, and now want to look at fair taxation. What are the issues? What does it mean to tax fairly? What are the implications to the economy, to the private sector, to the public sector? What are the things that should be addressed and things that have been addressed? That's what we want to look at this morning. And I have joining me in the studio Mr. Anthony Anebwe. Mr. Anthony Anebwe is a regular here and a member Civil Society Legislative Advocacy, CISLAC. He's also a member Tax Justice and Governance Platform. So together we'll look at this issue of fair taxation. Let me read out there. It says, Justice, Development and Peace Caritas, JDPC NEWI, is the host organization implementing Just Financing for Development, F4D, project in Anambra State, which aims at coherence and systemic policy on how to effectively tax the informal sector in a manner that is sustainable to engender the protection of rights of the taxpayers, to promote voluntary compliance and ensure fairness and justice for taxpayers. Can you tell us what fair taxation means?
Yeah, thank you very much. Anambra, fair is fair. Tax is tax. Fair taxation is what we believe that will bring harmony in tax process. Fair taxation is whereby the individual is taxed fairly according to what he supposed appropriate taxation being levied on an individual. Because at the long short of it, the government must get tax. People must pay tax. And when these taxes are levied fairly, it will enable the payer to pay with happiness, and it will also enable government to get this tax paid by individuals for the purpose of development of the state. So fair taxation is equitable taxation, which people will pay without being overstressed.
So would you say that the taxing regime in Nigeria has not been fair, especially when it involves the private sector?
Yeah, actually we have done some research. We have done some survey on taxation in Nigeria, and in particular in Anambra. We discovered that there are some areas where there are some unfairness, not just only on the government policy, but also on the mode of collection. Because we discovered that at times people are made to pay taxes they are not supposed to pay, in what we call multiple taxation, and also what we call double taxation. We also discovered that for that some people evade tax, some people dodge paying. We also discovered that in some process, many people get into collection of taxes illegally, whereby people go onto the street, raise army of intimidators that go around and intimidate people. Governments sometimes are not aware of this group of people who now resort to intimidation to raise money from individuals in the name that government sent them. But when we made our visits to government agencies that are involved in taxation, we discovered that some of these people on the road were not actually sent by government. So we're looking at the government side, the people's side, and in between the collectors. How do they do it? How is it going to be done so that properly people will pay maximally?
Okay, before we begin to look at this fair taxation, I want us to look at the regime we are practicing already. What is on ground when it involves the private sector investment, ordinary people? Because for civil servants, it's not usually an issue because there is system of collection and payment. Now, for those people in the private sector, where someone can decide not to pay or lock his shop when he sees tax collectors, and cases you mentioned of illegal collectors. Is it that the policy on ground that enables this revenue mobilization and collection is inadequate to properly collect or tax these ones, or is it that it's just a system the fall of the system? Is it a policy direction weakness, or the system not being able to harmonize or implement what's already on ground?
Always there are people who want to subvert the good policies of government. You can remember, even from the past regime in Anambra State, and also in this present regime, there has been a very concerted effort to make sure people pay their taxes. When we mention these taxes, we include rates, levies, and all payments people are supposed to pay to government. Now, government has made it clear that people should pay to direct to the bank, not giving it to people, not paying cash to individuals. But we also discovered that even when that is done, some people subvert that. You understand? And again, a lack of proper communication, information that should reach the taxpayer. Some of these people don't even know where to pay. They don't even know the bank that they should pay, designated banks. They don't even know the amount that they should pay. For instance, in Anambra State, we know that the government has what they call the consolidated bank tax and rate, and there's a certain amount the government said they should pay. That is cumulative in all that person should pay. Now, when they don't know the banks they are going to pay them to, people will now come around, molest them. And when this molestation comes, when people actually do not pay when, and that's when they're supposed to pay. Because if somebody has paid appropriately at the time when he's supposed to pay the appropriate fee through the official banking, then there will be no need for anybody to come and disturb you for not paying. So in actual sense, I would say that both policy failure, policy implementation, and communication gap, these are what's actually...
Okay, would you say the tax regime we're practicing for the private sector presently is exploitative?
You see, right now we are trying to get what we call the harmonized tax list. During the last few weeks, we had with the Internal Generated Revenue Office. We discussed with an officer there, and we are looking for what we call the harmonized list of these payments. And the gentleman we met said they are still working on the document so that we will know actually how this tax payment has been harmonized. So on that sense, we cannot actually give a verdict of whether it is fair from the side you just asked. You understand? But what we know is that the collection, the process of collection is a very serious problem. Because even if I am to pay 1,000 naira, and all of a sudden some hefty men come around and start seizing my wares, destroying my office because of tax payment. You remember sometimes the government outlawed this use of people blocking road. Yes, tax agents that blocks road drop nails. You understand? And good, and government outlawed that. So all these things were done to make taxation fair and honorable. So what we are trying to say in effect is that when people are made to pay the appropriate tax they are supposed to pay, and they pay and then the government go around to use this money, because when we talk about fair taxation, we're not only talking about the payment, we're also interested in how you use the money that comes out of this taxation to solve people's problem. In the markets, you get some market, you see some of them are eyesore, some don't have even the urinary toiletry where people can ease themselves. The road, the parks, they are no longer there.
Those are the questions of people ask.
The refuse disposal.
If we continue paying this tax and they don't do this, what's the reason? What's the fairness to pay tax? Should this be the reason for tax evasion? Is it that people feel they are not being accounted for, that the tax being demanded of them is exploitative? Is that the reason for tax evasion?
Nobody has any reason to evade payment of tax. You don't need... If you feel the tax you have been made to pay is not being used in the way you want it, you have to pay your tax first and then complain appropriately. We have in that process also encouraged people concerned to develop what we call a charter of demand from the government, a document that states these are what we need from the government so that let this money we are paying in form of tax levies and rates be channeled towards that, like what we discovered in some area, refuse collection in markets that may not be done properly and that's when due. So we encourage the taxpayers to go on paying your tax and then make your demand appropriately through the appropriate authority. You have no reason to fail to pay your tax, whether it is being done, used properly, because government is also yours. You get the point. It's your government. So what you do is use proper channel of communication to let the government do what it's supposed to do by through the appropriate agency. But you must have to pay your tax so that you will have the stake. If you don't pay your tax, you've not done all you're supposed to do before you complain. So you do the right thing and
first.
Complain.
Okay, let's look at the rights of the payers now. You talked about intimidation being a factor when it comes to collection of these taxes. There's also cases of multiplication of levies. You pay for this agency, pay for this agency, pay to the Revenue Mobilization Office, the Revenue Collection Office, and then you have several agencies to pay development levies, and people are being exhausted. How do we address this when it comes to the rights or the privileges of the taxpayer?
Well, that is when we talk about consolidation. And I reminded you that Anambra State government, for instance, have gotten what you call the consolidated revenue on this issue of tax and rates. I think recently it was tailored down to about, I think, either 12,000 or 10,000, so the case may be, bringing all that the person is supposed to pay in a year. You get the point. In other words, it will now make it possible that you are no longer asked to pay arbitrarily. Any person coming to say you have to pay this without being sure that this is what you're supposed to pay. So when we call for consolidated revenue scheme, what that means is that we want to eliminate all those gray areas of multiple taxation, double taxation, and the inappropriate taxation. So we are happy the Anambra State government has actually gotten to such extent. But what we want to appeal more is that the banks where they should pay should be made public, communicated to the taxpayers appropriately, so that they should pay when and when they are supposed to pay, and then use those money to help make the area those people that pay tax work. Like I've mentioned, the market particularly, where we've discovered that sometimes, even after all this, even after all that we've done, we still see some people who go to, because I remember 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, some people were apprehended at, I think, Amansi, whom we know they are illegal collectors who go about collecting money from people.
Mr. Anibwe, hold your thoughts. We'll go for a short break now. When we come back, more issues as far as fair taxation in the state and the country is concerned will be looked at. Stay tuned with us.
The public service announcement. The Special Reconciliation Committee, headed by Dr. Uju Okeke as chairman and Barrister Ifatu Obiokoye as secretary, set up at the instance of the national leader and chairman of the Board of Trustees, His Excellency Chief Dr. Willie Obiano, to look into critical complaints arising from the recently concluded party primaries of ABGA as it relates to Anambra State, has therefore scheduled to meet all aggrieved aspirants and other critical stakeholders in the order hereinafter stated as follows. Monday, the 5th day of November 2018, the Reconciliation Committee shall be meeting with the State Executive Committee of ABGA. Venue is the Party Secretariat, Oka, time 2 p.m. prompt. Tuesday, 6th day of November 2018, the Reconciliation Committee shall be meeting with all aggrieved aspirants in Anambra State. Venue, Governorship Campaign Office along Oka Enugu Express Road, time 10 a.m. Wednesday, 7th day of November 2018, the Reconciliation Committee is meeting with all aggrieved aspirants in Anambra State continues Venue is Governorship Campaign Office along Oka Enugu Express Road, time 10 a.m. prompt. Thursday, 8th day of November 2018. Meetings with all aggrieved aspirants concluded. Venue Governorship Campaign Office along Oka Enugu Express Road, time 10 a.m. prompt. Friday, 9th day of November 2018. The Reconciliation Committee shall be meeting with all elected candidates of the party. Venue Governorship Campaign Office along Oka Enugu Express Road, time 10 a.m. prompt. Monday, 12th day of November 2018. The Reconciliation Committee shall be meeting with all political appointees in the government of Anambra State, namely commissioners, special advisors, heads and members of statutory and non-statutory agencies and parastatals of government, senior special assistants, SSAs, special assistants, SAs, and executive assistants, EAs, including chairman and members of transition committee in the 21 local government areas. Tuesday, 13th November to Thursday, 15th November 2018, 3 days. Private visit of Reconciliation Committee to selected stakeholders and party leaders. Friday, 16th day of November 2018, Reconciliation Committee meets to consider the final report. Saturday, 17th day of November 2018, submission of final report to His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Anambra State. The Reconciliation Committee therefore enjoins all affected persons to cooperate with the committee in the general interest and well-being of our great party. God bless you all. Announcer, Barrister Ifatu Obiokoye, SPAD, Secretary, Reconciliation Committee.
Yes, we are still looking at the topic fair taxation, and so far we've looked at how the private sector will be fairly taxed and how tax evasion can be curbed. Now we want to look at the issue of multiple taxation, where people, after they must have paid to this organization, another one comes. Now, you mentioned the plan by state government where you go to bank and pay, and you advise that more publicity should be made concerning that. There are still people who will say, we've made this payment, but still people come to tell us that these levies, you must pay them. And it seems as if you were talking about consolidated now. There are still agents who come to claim we are from local government, we are from this place, we are from this place. The one you paid is for the state government.
You see, that's why we recommended what we call the establishment of hotlines by the government institution, so that people will get clarified on any ambiguity in what they have done and what they ought to do, as far as taxation is concerned. And we raised that with the internal IGR office down in Anambra State, and they are also looking into that, establishing a hotline, so that if anybody comes into your office or your shop and makes some demand that you are not sure, you are not convinced, or you feel you have actually done your noble responsibility, you pick up your phone and make a call to the government agency who will clarify, or who will call the person to order. So, like I said, all these things comes around when there is gap in communication. And I want you to understand that taxation has become revenue generation for touts in some areas, even in this Anambra State, where people get themselves together. It's like an armed robbery now. People move into the streets, provided you can intimidate people and extort money from them. They've been doing it, and I'm sure government is also trying to arrest those people who go about doing that. Because we can, just like you said, even after you've paid what you're supposed to pay, somebody will still come, intimidate you, and especially those who are unaware, who are not literate enough to defend themselves.
Yes, talking about those who are not literate enough to defend themselves, we have issue. There was something you mentioned about harmonized payment. I want to ask, does it mean everybody across board, despite or in spite of your income, will still be paying the same amount of money across board?
Well, invariably, that's not so. You have to separate what is called levy. Levy are different. For instance, like I've said before, if the government says we want to raise what we call education levy. Education levy should be cut across, because the way education is important to the rich, that's the way it is important to the poor. A levy is placed across board. But when we talk about the actual taxation, taxation is paid, segregated in different dimensions and in different capacity. There's one that is you pay as you earn. You get the point, the amount there's one they call income tax, which comes as much as your income, certain percentage of your income you pay. So if you make a 10,000 naira income, you pay some percentage of it, which is not going to be the same if you are making 1 million naira. So it's not going to be across board. But what I'm trying to say, it is not in all cases that you are made to pay equal. You get the point. For instance, like I gave you an example of that of education. You understand? That will be across board. But when it is an issue that relates how much do you have, for instance, tenement rates people pay, a landlord pays that, tenants don't pay that. You get the point. So all categories, like what consolidated revenue should do is to segregate all this.
What about when it comes to asset declaration? People declaring something far lower than what they earn as their income. You know, some of those in markets, I had experience of being in market at a point, and there are some people who operate without books. Their business is virtually on their heads. And how do you now manage for this? How would these people pay? How would you calculate their tax? How is it done?
Those are now the job of the investigators, tax investigators. There are people who work in the tax offices. Their duty is to investigate whether you're actually giving the government the appropriate information so that you will be taxed appropriately. When it's discovered that you didn't, that you dodged some information, you are charged to court. You are dodging your responsibility. So we know actually that there are people who dodge information, who do not give enough information about how much they are earning. If you remember, even if you go into because you can remember the exact we are discussing here is unorganized people. Yes. In the organized area where you register your company, you're supposed to declare your assets. And if you declare your assets, you under-declare it. If you eventually discover that you declared, you will be charged to court. So
what will be your advice to government, to people, to ensure that there is fair taxing for the citizens?
The first of my advice to government is that the money which the people pay as taxation rates and levy into government cover should be appropriately used to give people the services, because with why some markets you go there, they are dead. In fact, some people do their business in open drain, beside open drain, filthy environment. Refuse disposal is not taken away. Refuse is not taken away, it's not disposed as and when due. So we first in fair taxation is that the taxes should be used based on people's demand. Let people be consulted. What would you need? What is your problem in this area, so that we can deal with them. Then the other one is that government should also make information available to taxpayers so that they should know where to pay, and they should also know who to complain to when there is a problem, when people come to molest them. We are on the same vein advising the public to continue to pay your tax, no matter what is your problem. If you think that certain things are not provided, you have to pay your tax so that you will have the locus to complain. If you don't pay your tax, you don't have the locus to complain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Engineer Anthony Anambra, Member Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and Member Tax, Justice and Governance Platform. Thank you for joining us this morning to look at the issue of fair taxation. Your last words were exhaustive enough, and that is how we call it a day on this segment of Good Morning Anambra. News on the hour comes up at 9, and Sports Today follows shortly. Remember, the advice here was that the issue of NLC should always come at the front burner to address certain challenges facing the workforce without getting to the level of showdowns. That is how we call it a break now. When we come at 9, the news on the hour will come your way. I'm still David Opasile.